The Southern Agency is presenting to us today, and it was founded by Derek Wers. Derek has over 30 years of experience in the business, and he's joined today by Chris Kane, who is the Vice President of the Southern Agency, and then also Austin Case, who is the Managing Agent of their new Nashville branch. So welcome to Derek, Chris, and Austin, and thank you so much for contributing today, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Tara. We really appreciate the offer to make this presentation today, and I'm really super excited about seeing my friends here on this video today. Today we're presenting to you 30 steps, no pun intended, 30 steps to a successful insurance program for a stair builder. And we also have a little subtitle called The Rise and Run of a Successful Insurance Program. The presentation today is primarily centered around the property and liability exposures of a stair manufacturer, stair builder, millwork contractor, and we'd like to start off with the workers' compensation coverage. Workers' compensation coverage is sort of an interesting coverage. We come around the office, it's a win, 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 win system, in that the employees win because they actually wind up having a predetermined sum of already predetermined coverage if they get injured on an accident. Employers win because they wind up being able to transfer that responsibility onto the back of an insurance company. And the court systems win because they wind up having the ability to not have a lot of litigation coming into the system. Insurance companies can make a profit by selling the policies, and then the states win by helping create a system that they can collect premium taxes. And then also there's sort of a healthy combination between workers' comp and safety, in that workers' compensation companies are sort of an extra division of the state, and that they help employers become safe. And so we found that something really interesting about work comp is the fact that one of the first workers' compensation systems go as far back as pirate days, when if a pirate lost an eye, he would get a specific sum of benefits. So it's something very interesting about that. But then Chris, I'll turn it over to you for next step.
Yeah, most people don't understand. I was an adjuster for 27 years. And it always amazed me. People just bought workers' comp. They didn't really understand what they're buying. You basically got two parts to a workers' compensation policy. The first one is the one everybody's familiar with, is the statutory benefits, which is basically, when you say statutory, every state has their legislature that actually develops statutes and rules that govern the workers' comp. It's set by the government, things of that nature. And basically what the workers' comp policy does is it says that we will cover what the state says we need to cover. It's really a simple policy in that regard, but it's also state specific. When you do work in one state and you do it in another, it's always, and we'll go into it further later, you want to make sure you got all the states you're doing work in listed, because each state has different nuances, different rates, and different rules. And the insurance companies have to have that on their policy to do that.
Right.
And part two of that is really the employer's liability coverage. So this coverage protects an employer from its own actions. Coverage is rarely used or claimed because workers' compensation coverage is so broad in that sense.
Right, and that was Austin Case out of our Nashville branch, and he's brand new. He started in November, and he's doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Austin. Step 4 is in essence what Chris was alluding to, is workers' compensation is state-specific coverage. And I see some of my friends from Ohio on the call. In certain states, you have to buy workers' compensation coverage from the state, and the concern is that a lot of contractors say in Ohio, when you leave Ohio and you go to, say, New York to do an installation, or you go to Florida to do an installation or what have you, and you may not have coverage in that state. So be aware of that. And for more information on that, we can really help you with that and tell you more about how to navigate that. But also, you need to be aware of how the policy works. It may not be this way for Ohio, but if you'll notice here on the document that's presented, it says Part 3, Other States Coverage, A, and how this insurance works. I'd like to show you number 4. Number 4, it says, if you have work on the effective date of the policy in any state not listed under the policy on the information page, coverage will not be afforded in that state unless they're notified within 30 days. So to the point I would like to make here is that workers' compensation policies have landmines. And to make sure that you don't have a landmine and a problem, you need to understand how your policy is structured.
The next thing is really the pre-injury planning. We're all here on the phone right now, and you know, everybody ought to think to themselves, if something happened out in the shop, what would you do? Who's going to be the person you're going to go to that needs to be reported? Have you got all these things? Have you gone through it in your mind? Have you gone through it with your employees? I mean, other things that are sort of important. If you do have something that's traumatic, can you get all the employees to one area or one location outside where they're safe, things of that nature? I had an example about a year ago. I had a lady get her hand caught in a machine and her hand was degloved. Well, you know, that was the problem, was getting all the employees away from her so the emergency crews could get through it. You want to have all these, I know it's not what everybody wants to think about, but you need to do that at least once a year to know what needs to be done. You know, have your employees next of kin and emergency contacts up to date and have them ready available so you can address all these issues. And the other thing that we've done, and we did about a year ago, is we actually instituted telemedicine. Now, I know there's been a spotlight on telemedicine through years with this virus, but we actually took telemedicine a whole lot further. Tennessee actually had the rules, or had the statute on the books, but they're just now developing the rules. But we were able to utilize a telemedicine doctor, a mobile drug screen, and a mobile x-ray, where we actually have had several cases where an employee's been injured on the job and never left the job site. We did, everything came to them, which in this day and age is very, very convenient and very important for safety regards. So if anybody wants any more information on that, please feel to let us know.
Chris, I'm going to stop you for just a second. We have a question from Bob King. Go ahead, Bob.
No, I just figured out where the hand thing was. So you.
Okay, I'll take it down. No worries.
Now that I got your attention, one thing I want to point out that we've done as far as the pre-injury planning. All of my employees, we have one spot that is put in a non-disclosed location, privacy. All employees have made out a standard paper that says who their doctor is, who the emergency contact person is, they have any medical conditions that a emergency treatment person knows, allergies. And we have it one spot on the board and covered with a plain piece of paper. Employees know, so if something happens, what we can do is pull that down, give it to the emergency worker, say, here you go, here's all the first doctor, allergies, all that stuff, so that we're not trying to do that panic situation.
Yes, because it's very important, because, you know, a lot of people aren't going to know if they've got an allergic. I mean, I give you an example. My grandmother, I didn't know she was allergic to penicillin until something happened to her last year. Never crossed my mind. She just happened to wait to remind me. But if she hadn't been, well, it'd been a totally different situation. But it's good to have, and we'll move on to Austin on his portion.
Yeah, and you basically nailed this slide on the head with that. We don't want you to, kind of when someone gets hurt, be first name unknown, last name unknown when it comes to an employee. You want to be able to know who they are. You want to know exactly that contact information that you need to contact if they do get hurt or something does happen. And like always, keep that confidential and, really don't let your employee be a number. Bob, you hit this slide really right on the head with that.
Thank you, Austin. And thank you, Bob, for the question in the comment. 7, post-injury planning. If you don't have a plan, as Ben Franklin said, if you don't have a plan, then you plan to fail, something along those lines. You got to put a plan into action and have all employees in the plan. Understand how to utilize the physicians in your area. In some states, you have to have an actual physicians panel posted. In some states, you have to have a panel of physicians that the management team at your company directs the injured worker to. So Chris is an expert at that particular part in the agency, and he can help you, and depending upon your state. And I'm gonna let Chris talk about the pharmacy benefit manager here in a moment, but the last couple of things is that you need to report your accidents. If you have an accident, need to report them in a timely manner, almost immediately to your insurance company. The outcome of a claim and the value of that claim is a lot different if there's a lag time in the report. Then you need to cross-train your employees on how to do other job functions. If you don't do that, then you wind up not being prepared to bring somebody back to work in a light duty capacity. It's important that you bring them back in a light duty capacity. And we'll talk about that here in a few moments about how that affects your costs. But I'd like to turn to Chris and ask him to share a little bit of more insight about pharmacy benefit manager and why it's important to a stair manufacturer.
Yeah, this goes back to those claims. We use the PBM is what's referred to, and most of your insurance companies have some variants of this. It's good to pull out those policies and have those available, because what happens is, you send somebody off to the emergency room or to walk-in facility, or even a telemedicine doctor, when they go to get that first prescription filled, if you don't have formularies set, well, the pharmacist is going to pick the most expensive name brand drug, which is going to be on the prescription. These pharmacy benefit managers actually take them first to generic if they're available, and then they control what the prescriptions are. They're not going to allow for a prescription for hair growth or anything else, as far as that's concerned. It's going to limit it to prescriptions that are more readily available just for injuries, not for any other type of problems. But those are some of the tools that you have available, but you got to do them in advance and make sure you got everything set up on them. And that leads me to step 8. That's one of the ways to limit your exposure. All of us hope we never have a claim. We hope nobody gets hurt. But it's sort of like my college professor, Dr. Finch. He said there's 6 P's to everything, especially finance. Prior preparation prevents pitifully poor performance. And he said a lot of people mastered the last 3. But what I'm trying to say is, go through and have your early work programs in place. Have your review when you do your policy, review all your safety and emergency contacts, just like Bob was talking about. Have everything updated. Take advantage of your insurance carrier. Show your safety program to your carrier and let them review it. They always have the experts and can make some suggestions as well. And those are resources that were out there. Same way with telemedicine. You have to get that set up beforehand so you can call in and actually get to a doctor. One thing on telemedicine, there's different variances of telemedicine. You want to try to stay away from the ask a nurse. And if you're doing telemedicine, you want to be able to go on to one where you actually get to a doctor. Otherwise, it's just a referral service. But,
Thank you, Chris.
again, anything you can do to prepare is always well worth it when that time comes.
Thank you, Chris.
All righty. And this step is you don't try to be your own insurance company. You know, it's very tempting to just, you know, try to pay those small out of pocket, you know, so you don't get a claim, so your premium doesn't go up. But, you know, really, it'll be much greater than you think in terms of how much it actually costs, and it's forbidden most likely in your insurance policy. So you do want to accept the deductible on your work comp. It will help you with your experience mod in some states. And then there's tools also where you can get discounts on your workers' compensation, like the drug-free workplace program, and then the medical fee schedule as well, which I think, is that you, Derek, or is that you, Chris?
Yeah, I'll start it off and say this. In most states, when someone is injured and let's say they have stitches in their hand, there's a medical fee schedule that the doctor needs to use, or the insurance company is going to demand that they pay the physician based on a predetermined fee schedule. And so the point I make a lot of times to our Stairbuilders is the fact that if you wound up having 5 stitches in the hand, and let's say that costs $700 to go to the physician, the insurance company may only pay $400 for that injury because of the medical fee schedule. And a lot of employers are tempted to just pay that small claim less than $1,000 out of their pocket. Well, what our position is don't pay small claims out of your pocket. If you want to take some risk, take a deductible, let the insurance company be the payer, and then you have them, you'll reimburse them for whatever your deductible is. And most often, and I'd say almost 100% of the time, you're going to come out on top on that because the deductible and how much you pay for that injury is going to be less than what you would have paid had you been your own insurance company and paid it out of pocket. So, Chris, if you have anything to add to that, we can move on to the next one.
Go ahead, Derek. That's good.
You know, earlier I mentioned that workers' compensation is sort of tied to safety and OSHA, work comp. Sort of a lot of times people think of those in simultaneously, because if OSHA, if an employer, if a stair builder, a contractor followed every OSHA rule, then technically there would be a whole lot less likelihood that somebody would get injured. And so the point that we often have to get involved in when our contractors wind up having an injury, we always have to ask ourselves, did you need to report that to OSHA? If some of the key parts that you need to remember is that OSHA requires that you report to them if somebody dies on the job. They require you to contact them and report an injury if it requires an inpatient hospitalization, or an amputation or an injury to an eye, or loss to an eye rather. Now that we're in the coronavirus times and the COVID-19 times, OSHA has created a guide that you need to look at or consider looking at, that's down here at the bottom of the link. If you just Google OSHA.gov coronavirus guide, then you can look at it. And it's about a 30+ page document that will give you instructions on how to operate a manufacturing facility as an essential business, and do so keeping employees as safe as possible in your facility. And that is a guide. I'm not real sure what the fines and penalties would be if you didn't operate by that guide, but it's important you follow their rules. Chris?
Main thing with OSHA is, you know, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. I mean, that's sort of instilled on all of them, the inspectors and people that deal with OSHA is there. But you need to also realize that a lot of OSHA is going to start eventually having everybody do the electronic upload of the OSHA records. Also, the insurance companies are wanting to see these records as well. The posted notices are still the same from February 1st to April 30th. You know, the posting needs to be put up for everybody to see. And then make sure it's delegated to one person where everything's reviewed. This is a good time of year to review it and make sure that you have everything in line.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Alrighty, and really, you want to integrate your safety programs very frequently. I know it's not the prettiest or shiniest object on the shelf, but it is something that is very important, not only to your business, but also to the insurance carrier as well. And we've kind of separated into two different parts, I guess, where we have a job hazard analysis, where you're identifying hazards in the materials, processes, machinery, et cetera, and then job safety analysis, where you're identifying the safety of the employees, your methods, and really the ergonomics of how the employees perform their jobs. So Derek's going to kind of go over an example, a recent example that he's found, and here it is right here.
So this is an example of identifying in the process of job hazard analysis. This is one of my good close client friends, Stairbuilder. One of the hazards that was present inside his facility. It was a homemade saw guard used, and if you'll look where the pink is protruding there, the saw blade was protruding beyond the saw guard. And we solved that problem. I'm not sure if this is necessarily an OSHA approved table saw, but we solved this problem by putting a counterweight on the back side of that saw so it would retract back that saw blade further back past the guard. Had that not happened, someone would be injured, and somebody had been injured, but that's how we solved the problem in that situation. So my point is about job hazard analysis is that it's important that you at least evaluate exposures like that and come up with solutions to solve them. This is an example of what I'm quite proud of. It's called the Staircase Buddy. It's a scoop dolly. I'm hoping that one of my friends and prospects that's a stair manufacturer on this actually was taken inside his facility. But this particular product, this Staircase Buddy, a lot of you have seen this. The last time it was demonstrated was at the SMA convention in New Mexico, Santa Fe, I believe. This particular product was manufactured to assist stair manufacturers in moving product. It keeps the hands, it keeps the legs, it keeps the knees, it keeps the feet from getting injured as a result of nudging and pulling and tugging. This is a manufacturing facility that has a lot of stairs being produced, and I was quite proud of this. I didn't develop the product, but I explained the problem to a manufacturer, and he solved the problem by creating the Staircase Buddy. And that's just the job safety analysis. And if you guys want more information on that, how to get that, contact me and I can give you more information. Austin, I believe you're up, right? No, that's me. Okay. Step 13, identify, measure, and your risk and address it. I think that the main thing is that, we all talk about PPE these days with coronavirus here in front of us. Just be aware that there's a lot of PPE. When I go out to the manufacturing plants, I see a lot of guys have their glasses on their head or their glasses in their pocket, or their gloves not on, and their guards not on the saws. Just put it front and center. An injury to somebody's hand is tough on them. And even if it takes an extra 2 minutes to produce a product as a result of using this proper safety protocols, it's important to them. And when you see somebody that's not operating the way that your protocol, your safety program is established, confront them and tell them what you expect. I think the most important thing is explain what you expect and inspect what you expect. Inspect what you expect. And that's important stuff there from my vantage point. I can tell you before I turn it over to Chris, I can say that I always talk about peer group in the stair business. I've got clients across the country in the stair business that they never, ever have a claim workers' compensation. I have clients that are in the stair business that have 1 and 2 and 3 a year. So what is the difference? It has everything to do with both things that we just now talked about.
The other thing we want to talk about is, know who you're hiring. A lot of times people try to use workers' comp as a fix for their hiring mistakes. That's really counterintuitive. I've seen it. It usually complicates problems if you got somebody that's a problem to begin with. And the thing that I always hated to see the most was when we had a problem employee and he didn't get himself hurt, he got somebody else hurt. And that's always a bad thing to have. So if you got a problem, go ahead and address it. Don't let it turn into getting somebody else hurt. Again, look at your pre-hire process, your post-hiring process, getting those medical, conditions, documented. Are you checking references, the I-9s, backgrounding? There's also options of using staffing agencies as well to sort of screen out undesirables. Anything that you can do to, keep your workforce solid is a goal everybody ought to strive for.
Thank you, Chris.
And I think really the point of this slide is that we want to tell you guys that we want you to show the insurance carriers how you're hiring these employees, because if you don't do that, really your premium is going to be loaded up there on the front end because they don't really know anything about you. So really this is just kind of a slide, I think, really to tell you guys that we want to help you explain your hiring process to those carriers, whether it be you check MVRs if they're driving or things like that. We want to have kind of that entire employee application laid out attached to your insurance application, really so that way the underwriter can understand your business really to its core from when somebody starts out at your company and kind of moves through that hiring process. So really, I think just to sum up this slide is we want to help you guys explain that hiring process and how well you're doing in checking the backgrounds and safety and all that with that, so that way you can kind of you won't be loaded up on your premium in the front end there.
Thank you, Austin. Know the impact of your claims. An experience modification is in essence a factor that will be applied to your premium based off your prior claims experience. If you have more claims than what the expectation is, you're going to get a debit on the premium. If you have less than the expectation, you're going to get a credit on your premium. Insurance companies are most likely predicting your future claims based off of that experience mod. And I will tell you this, every single claim does have an impact on your mod, and I'll say, and it will stick with you for 5 years, maybe less, but probably 5 years. And you could indeed, and I think probably the most important thing is that I'd like to tell you, in the world of competition, if your labor rate is here, but your competition's labor rate is there, who's going to get the business if it's razor thin margins? So keep that in mind. Workers' compensation, I have seen it. I actually understand there's a lot of problems in this area. A lot of people don't understand it. We have solutions to this, and we think that we're onto something using these practices. Don't lose business because you have work comp claims.
All righty. And now we're going to get into, I believe, the training resources.
Yeah, use your training resources that are out there. I know we keep harping on it, but everybody can have a safety program, but make sure it's reasonable. It's something that your employees can understand as practical. I mean, there's good things that you can do, as far as, making sure, things are picked up, people aren't, things are off the floor, trip hazards, those type of things. But, make sure that you explain that and go there. Go ahead, Bob. But at any rate, involve your staff, your agent, insurance consultants, and use some of the programs that are out there, like those Got Safety and waltme.com.
Thank you, Chris.
So
Bob, do you have a
I have
question?
a question. Yeah. So I have a question on what they're saying about mod. I think that, it goes back to the fact that you're talking about, okay, you got a small $1,000. Mentality, most of us is you kind of I was sold on the fact that, okay, make your claim, but then you come back and you say, well, it affects the mod for 5 years. So where is the balance there? If you've got a $500 doctor bill, that going to affect your mod, or really what's the effect that? You're going to pay $1,500 premium over 5 years because of that $500. That's what you're thinking. Small injury. Where's the balance?
Well, I think that I'm not sure that I understood the entire question because there's
Cutting
basically
out a little bit, yeah.
bad connection somehow or another, Bob. But Chris, did you understand? Could you hear this question?
Yeah, I think what he's trying to say was the balance on it. And we had talked earlier about turning in all your claims, and then
I got you.
and then now you've got, well, this is going to affect my mod. From the answer, go ahead. Derek.
From a premium standpoint, I'll take that one. When a claim standpoint, Chris can take it because that's his area of expertise. It's actually a conversation that you need to have with your insurance agent and come up with a fantastic idea. It's the bottom line is that you cannot pay the claims out of your pocket. If you do, then you wind up violating probably law and violating what the policy says. You're to report these claims and you're to let the carrier be the payer. Most state statutes say the payer of the claim has to be the insurance carrier. So, but there is a little bit of a balance. You need to sort of understand what deductible or what kind of risk do you want to take is probably maybe the spirit of that. But most often, a lot of our policies are built with between a $500 and a $2,500 deductible. We have certain states we can go up higher than that, but the deductible is not collected until after you have the claim has been processed. Most often, once the insurance company reaches that number of what that deductible value is, then they could possibly be invoicing you. But I hope I answered your question, Bob, and I can certainly call you and give you more information and insight. We do have a question from Robert.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, I'll call you about your question there, sir. All right.
All right.
Austin, you're up.
All righty. So now we're going to talk a little bit about general liability. And, general liability coverage is very broad, protects the business for bodily injury and property damage caused by you to the public. It is not a warranty policy, and it is not intended to cover property damage to the product that you install or manufacture. The premium is typically, charged based on either your payroll or your sales. And there are policies that are now available that give you a 3-year lock on the policy and the premium, which is, a great thing that's kind of starting to roll out with carriers there.
Yeah, and what we found is we actually can do liability enhancements. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the policy excludes errors and omissions, but they can be extended to these coverage, but only specialized insurance companies will write the coverage. Example, they're never going to really pay. A normal policy is never going to pay for a staircase or something that's your product that's defective. You have to have an endorsement or to go on to the policy to actually expand or enhance that coverage. And I'm going to let Derek talk a little bit more about that.
So an example might be that, let's say you have a hotel project, you manufactured staircases to a specification that you understood. The specifications were not clear, but you assume certain things. You show up with a $500,000 staircase to install, and it was in essence installed, and then they say that's not the right product. That's an example of possibly an error and or omission. Another example would be things such as manufacturers' errors and omissions. You may as a or recall coverage. You may, which I think is slide 20, I believe. But an example to this would be if you manufacture a product and you wind up sending that to the job site, you don't install it. Let's say the carpenters install it, and let's say the product starts delaminating. The product was defective in some regards. A lot of the glues, a lot of the curing times inside the wood products have not been doing too well over the past 10 years when they've changed the formaldehyde content and so forth. We've seen some delamination, and we have one client that actually installed some millwork to the tune of $800,000, and every single solid exterior product delaminated. So significant claim on him. In his situation, I wasn't his agent at the time, but he did not have manufacturer's errors and omissions coverage. It's important stuff. It's not very expensive, and some of our stair builders have opted for that coverage and some don't. But contact us if you have concerns about it. If you're my policy holder, call me and we can go over the details of that if you don't have that coverage. All right, that's me. Division of labor. 21, workers' compensation and general liability sort of go hand in hand when it comes to the classifications for the policy. So what that means is if you have an installer, he or she may be at a different rate than the manufacturer. So if you're insurance agent, you should get with your insurance agent and make sure that you're getting the best possible classification for your business. And typically, in summation, typically the workers' compensation and the general liability, at least for the installers and for the factory workers, the manufacturer employees are synonymously the same labor rate is used, or same labor classification is used for those two classifications.
We're going to switch gears and talk now about the commercial auto. This is usually the biggest pain point with insurance companies and with our insureds as well. Distracted driving still tends to be the biggest problem out there. You know, just generally not paying attention. Everybody knows the fact, you know, most states now, not all of them have, you gotta have hands-free devices and those type things. But even at that, those are distractions. You want, underwriting is usually looking for what you're doing to try to control it. I mean, you can't be everywhere for your employees, but you can do things to lock up cell phones where they can't be used while they're driving. Make sure you're getting good drivers selected, experienced drivers. Make sure that you're giving them the tools to be aware, going over the rules of the road. You know, have your fleet safety programs in place. If you got a lot of vehicles, or you know, make sure that you're inspecting them on a regular basis and documenting it. You know, make sure vehicle, you know, bald tires is not what you want to see on a vehicle in an accident, or at any time for that matter.
We have another slide on that too, Austin.
You know, there's different, you know, and we've got some programs as well that we can use for distracted driving that helps our insureds. But, you know, make sure that they've got everything, their vehicles are serviced and up to date, and then make sure that the drivers are doing everything to be safe. I mean, they don't need to be, you know, shaving or talking on the phone, obviously texting, and even, some vehicles, even the radios could be a distraction in and of themselves. So, make them aware, make them know how important it is. I'd much rather you take up, 10, 15 minutes of their time every day than having to go out to the scene of an accident where somebody's gotten hurt and put
Chris.
everybody at risk.
I can go ahead and take this one if you'd like, Austin. There are certain apps that are available now. One is called Lifesaver app. It allows you to disable the cell phone of your employee from being able to receive a phone call at their ear. It disables their texting until they come to a stop. There's some really good things out there. And the last thing I'd like to say is that if you don't have a backgrounding agency, such as IntelliCore, is one of the ones that we recommend often, that can also run motor vehicle reports annually. That way you can come up with a standard and figure out and manage that standard. Because if you don't manage the auto fleet, it's going to manage you, and it's going to cause you great pain. In certain states, some of the participants that are on this call, automobile insurance has gotten out of control. And we're talking to the tune. I used to sell insurance in this particular state for $700 a power unit for delivery trucks or trucks that were on the road going to and from job sites. And now we're seeing rates in some states as much as $3,000 for a light truck. So it's important that you manage this and you get the right employees behind the wheel. I'd like to talk about property insurance, and we're on the downhill now, guys. Property insurance, Austin, you have several exposures to a loss. You have building, you've got equipment breakdown coverage, you got personal property coverage, which may include personal property of others. You got business interruption coverage, business income, and don't forget your materials in transit and your installation floater. A lot of stair manufacturers I go see do not have this coverage, and some of you have opted not to purchase this coverage. But you put a staircase en route to the job site, it very well could be damaged in a car crash. It could be stolen. It could be burnt in a truck fire. Whatever the case may be, you do have exposure to loss when that material leaves the facility.
Bob has a question.
Yes.
I have a question back about vehicles. We have now ICC numbers because we have our diesel pickup with trailers for 17,000 pounds. So you're paying for someone to do a license check. Do we get break on our insurance if we notify the insurance company that we have ICC numbers now and our drivers all have to follow, get the physicals, everything? If we drive the vehicle, how does that work?
Bob, I think I understand the spirit of your question. You have an ICC number and you would like to know if the premiums are reduced or recognized as a reduction in premium as a result of that?
Yeah.
The short answer is no. In fact, the more filings that you have and things of that nature, the premiums indeed could go up. So, but I'll contact you and listen to what your question is a little bit more and tune in a little bit more, because I'm not sure that I heard the entire question. I apologize. There's a breakup in your audio.
To add to that, anything that you're doing to help safety wise that you could document and we can show to an insurance carrier, this strengthens your position and to get the best rates available.
Good point. Property insurance, back in the last point is if you're using spraying apparatuses, if you have a paint booth, if you need to be concerned about that. The insurance companies, that's the #1 pain point right now in stair manufacturing is the dust the use of paints, solvents, and chemicals, store them away properly, contact us. We'll give you some help and advice and thoughts about how to handle that.
Alrighty, now we're going to go into subcontractors. So really, what we want to tell you about using subcontractors is that we really want a written agreement, or we think that you should have a written agreement between you and your subcontractors, responsibly transferring the risk to and from the party that is responsible for that. So, Derek can kind of get into more of, the resources that we can provide you. But really, the main point of this slide really is to tell you that we highly recommend that you have that written agreement that really transfers the risk from you to them.
Thank you, Austin. On step 27, I sort of give you some bullet points there that in essence give you the things that the insurance company wants to see. We're not lawyers, but we at least can give you copies of contracts that you can get with your lawyer and say, is this a legal document in the states that I'm operating in? The contract needs to at least set forth what the terms or the limits should be. We give to our customers, if they want it, a sample certificate of insurance that's stamped sample. It's got your name at the bottom left. It's got the sample contractor at the top left that shows all the limits of insurance. And if you do business with me, or if you don't do business with me, and if you want one, I can create that for you. That way you can hand it to the sub and say, make your insurance look like this. Next is the insurance companies want to have, if you'll go back one slide, the last thing is the insurance company wants to have a waiver of subrogation, and they want to have a hold harmless, and they want to have you be named on the subcontractor's policy. And simple as that, it in essence requires the sub's insurance company to defend you, pay court costs, attorney fees for work that they cause damage on your job site or bodily injury or property damage. So for both completed operations and during the phase of construction. In conclusion, there's other exposures to loss that we could talk about it all day long. Cyber liability is a big concern. Crime insurance, employee theft, key employee replacement insurance is something that we could talk about. And in certain cases, pollution liability. I think probably the last thought I have about this is that understand your loss history, because your loss history is going to dictate what your terms and conditions are going to be on your future policies. Your renewability, your ability to get insurance at a reasonable rate, to get the best insurance. So take action plan on anything that if there's a trend going on inside your facility, people are nudging and tugging and getting injured with their hands, or they're getting knees blown out, or they're falling from the ladder, or they're having automobile accidents. There's a trend going on, and we need to get our arms around that. We tend to over-counsel our clients on that. We'd be glad to help you in any way. And now I'd like to open up the floor to any questions and give you any clarification on anything that we have gone over today. While we're waiting, I'll say this. This is the 32nd year of the stair manufacturers, and I'm grateful to be part of it. You can email me. My email address, if you need that, is dwirz, W-I-R-Z, at thesouthernagency.com. We're licensed in 30 plus states. And if you're in a state that we're not licensed, we can get licensed in that state and help you on your insurance. We'd like to give you a proposal. We do specialize in the stair manufacturing space, and but I also can give you advice about your current program or any kind of problem that you may be having in your current program. And I'll say this, my dad was my teacher. His name was Paul, and he said the best insurance agent comforts the afflicted and afflicts the comfortable. And I think you heard it from our pastor, but he converted it over to an insurance agent. But there's a lot of truth in that. A lot of things that we talked about today were things that were uncomfortable and things that need to be addressed inside a lot of your facilities. And we want to be a resource to you. We love insurance stair manufacturers. We love our clients. And I see a lot of them that are our clients here on the call today. And thank you for supporting us. And we appreciate it so much. I do have one private question. I'll get with him on that. And I guess
We might have another question as well from the Parks. Their hand is raised. So go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe you want to call me later, but I guess my concern is with this COVID-19, what's our insurance situation as far as people filing claims if they get it because of working? Because somewhere along the way, it's all going to, these lawsuits are going to start coming out from different places. Hopefully not.
Rusty, and Rusty, I appreciate the question. Rusty's my client, and I'll give you a call certainly and discuss more, but I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris is our resident expert on workers' compensation claims. And he's been studying a whole lot about this question. And Chris, in his case, he's Tennessee, of course, so you can address it from a Tennessee perspective.
Yeah, basically the way the states have been handling it so far, specifically the state of Tennessee, it has to be something specific to the employment. In other words, you know, did you go someplace that, you know, had more exposure? For example, you were putting a stairwell in a medical facility, or you were putting it in someplace that you know that there was a exposure greater than just being in the general public. You know, it's just like somebody getting the flu at work. You know, that's, you know, diseases that are out there in the general population are usually not covered under workers' comp. Now, they do make exceptions, you know, if they can identify somebody, or if they can, you're a, you know, medical profession where your exposure to it is higher than more than the general public. But that's where most of the carriers are going to have a stance on it. The other question has come up that I've had to deal a lot with our restaurant folks is the business interruption claims. Fortunately, that's from what we talked to most of our contractors and manufacturers. Y'all not had that kind of impact, you know, where you've lost 75% of your revenue. The business interruption policies, basically business interruption has to be triggered by a covered loss. There has to be something that damages the structure that these restaurants are in before business interruption takes place. Now, there's some different things going on out there. Some states are trying to liberalize it. There's also a proposal out there to take and make it a program sort of like the terrorism or the TRIA coverage, and making that a viable option as well. But we're keeping a close eye on it. If you do get one that wants to present a claim, please give me a call. I'll help you and guide you on what we do and don't need to do.
A lot of our clients, Rusty, we have contacted that had this kind of concern, and in some cases, we're certainly not. We haven't seen any policy yet that covers coronavirus shutdown or business interruption result of that. But it's our responsibility as insurance agents to report your concern to the insurance company and determine whether there is or isn't coverage. But back to the work comp, it's sort of like, I'll give you a fat word. It just depends. And if you do have something come up, you can contact Chris or myself, and we can guide you through it. But usually has to be within the course and scope of work, and typically it's a sudden and accidental thing. But and another short answer is we really don't know. But if you do have something that comes up, you can contact us and we can report it to the insurance company and let them make the decision as to how to pursue it. But thank you for the question.
Gotcha.
Well, I guess we've hit an hour, and again, So grateful for the business, so grateful for this forum. Tara, thank you very much for hosting this. And it's great to see my friends on this call today.